Welcome to Books for the Back Porch. I'm Matt. Usually when you stop by here, it's because you want to know which book's going to leave you looking over your shoulder or which book's going to leave you heartbroken. Today's going to be different. Today we're going to get personal for all of us. We're talking about why we read. The real reasons that we pick up a book and crack that spine, highlight a passage, or stay up way too late just to finish one more chapter, and then one more chapter, and one more chapter. I was tagged by Carl over at Please Read Your Book, and if you're not familiar with Carl, please do yourself a favor and check him out. His channel is incredible. I will leave a description for his channel in the comments, and you can check out him after you get done here. But he asked 4 questions that made me stop and really think about things and why I read. So we're going to dive into my philosophy of reading. There's 4 questions. You will see me just kind of going through the tag off of my screen, so if you see me looking down at something, that's what it is. Anyways, let's jump right into it. All right, the first question is, what is your personal philosophy on reading? And then there's some sub questions there as well, including what do you think about reading? How do you think about reading? What does reading mean to you? And how does your reading life affect your non-reading life? So how do I think about reading? It's not something that I really do consciously. It's just kind of something that happens, I don't intentionally set out to think about reading all the time. It just happens. And it's probably in the same way that people think about, the TV show that they're binging, or, the new movie that they've watched 3 times in theaters and how they kind of just obsess about that. That's what happens with me. When I read a book, especially where it takes, a week or 2 to read a book, depending on its length, it allows me to get immersed into that world, and I'm thinking about characters, and I'm thinking about how those characters and their experiences relate to me and relate to my life, and allow me to think about things that maybe I otherwise wouldn't have thought about. There's been books that have absolutely transformed me, absolutely opened my eyes to things that I had experienced and didn't even realize were happening at the time, and never would have been able to kind of have these pieces fall together if it hadn't noticed it in a book. It allows me to travel to these worlds, to these countries, to these parts of America that I would never be able to travel to otherwise. And it allows me to kind of get a better picture of what humanity is like and what culture is like and what the world really is like, especially when you are reading things within the kind of the crime fiction, the noirs, Appalachian fiction, Southern Gothic, even horror. A lot of these books and these genres that I read are taking issues with society and expanding upon them, and allowing you to work through your own thoughts and feelings on these in a safer way than having to actually experience these things for yourself. And one thing I'd throw in as far as how does my reading life affect my non-reading life, 2 quick examples on that is, one, that's fun. When I was younger, when I'd buy CDs, and yes, I am young enough or old enough to remember buying CDs in the 90s. I was always thrilled when there was a CD booklet inside and liner notes. I loved to read through the liner notes and see what bands the band thanked, what bands they say they've toured with, and that would be my roadmap of new bands to check out, new albums to check out, and if it wasn't for my love of reading, normally I would have just, popped the CD on and just thrown the case to the side. But it was that love of reading, of trying to get more information, that allowed me to really explore and expand my musical tastes. And a more recent one is the way that my work is governed. We have some laws and bylaws put forth through Congress that can be kind of esoteric and kind of opaque, and being able to enjoy taking a 40-page document and reading it and parsing out the information that's important, but also being able to kind of find that wiggle room that you're allowed to work and operate in, is something that I really enjoy. And if I didn't enjoy reading, if I didn't love reading, I certainly wouldn't be enjoying being able to do that for my work as well. Question number 2 is, when did you first come to think of yourself as a reader? it's just something that kind of happened, you know. I grew up in a household of readers. I have two older sisters. They were constantly reading. My parents, whenever they had free time on the weekends where they weren't working, doing chores, taking care of kids, shuffling us off from place to place, you know, you would find one or both of them, you know, on the couch or in a chair reading a book. You know, we were just constantly surrounded by books. I read a lot as a kid. I read the usual story time books, you know, but I would say when I really thought of myself as a reader, it was probably at a really young age, reading a book that I was probably way too young to read. I was in the 5th grade. It was a book called Rock Hard. It was written by a guy named Leon. His nickname was Whitey. I don't remember what his last name is off the top of my head, but I will put a picture of it here or here so you guys see which book I'm talking about. But it was an autobiography of a guy who in the 50s and 60s had been sent to Alcatraz for the crimes he had committed. And the book was about his growing up, the crimes he committed, what it was like on Alcatraz, the people he had met on Alcatraz when he was finally released, and some of the crimes he still committed after. And it was just an absolutely fascinating book to me as 9, 10 years old. I couldn't get enough of it. I read this book probably 5 or 6 times. There's still parts of this book that still, you know, rattle around in my head. Like this streets of San Francisco that like I can imagine and only imagine it this way because of how he described it in his book. I know how to siphon gas and get away with it because of him. Not that I've ever tried it, but it's something I learned and I was like, wow, that makes sense. And it's just stuck in my head for the past 30 years. But that's really when I would kind of cement myself as a reader, when I was picking up books for my own enjoyment. And from that point forward, as a teenager going on, that's just been constantly reading. And there's been different genres that I've gone to, but that really cemented me as a reader. Okay, next question. What are your goals or hopes for your reading life? What goals do you have? And one of the big goals I have is I want to read a book published every single year that I've been alive, with the caveat that an author can only appear on this list once. So, for instance, I want to also have a goal of read through all of Don Winslow's work. I've read 4 of his books so far. I have loved every single one of them, and I want to read them all. But if I pick a book for Don Winslow that he published in 2010, that will cover my 2010 year, but I cannot use Don Winslow again on this list. And it's not something that I am consciously saying, I need to read 1984, then 1985, then 1986. It's just something that I am letting happen naturally. So when I read a book from a year, I will just put it in for that year, and I might read a book from that year again. I might go back to books that were written, you know, well before 1980. And just be able to let it fall as it naturally happens within my reading lifestyle. As I said, I also do want to read all of Don Winslow's works. I've noticed that I have a history of not really reading the same authors repeatedly. I think there's probably only 10 authors that I've read 3 or more books from. I tend to hop around a lot because I'm just so excited to see what this next author has to say and what else they have, and then I'll love it, and then there's another new author I want to discover. And I kind of want to slow that down a bit and really get to know authors' works better. So I want to read all of Don Winslow. I want to read all of Attica Locke. I've got 2 or 3 more of her books to go through. I want to read all of Megan Abbott. I've loved everything that I've read from her so far. As always, I'm going to read everything S.A. Cosby writes. So far, all I have is some short stories and kind of like novellas before he really hit it big that I've got left to read. I'll always read anything Jordan Harper puts out. That will be, every time he has a new book, that's a rush out and buy for me. And just really be able to dive more into authors' works. That would be incredible. That's really the goal I'm working on alongside of the book for every year I've been alive list. And lastly, the question is, what's exciting or important in your current reading life? And I would say that this channel has been really exciting and important in my reading life. I started this channel because I felt like crime fiction and horror fiction was really kind of underserved here on BookTube. there's a lot of fantasy readers, there's a lot of sci-fi readers, and you have any questions about a book that you should read or a series you want to read that's within the fantasy or sci-fi genre, you will find plenty of amazing people talking about that. But when you're looking up for a book by S.A. Cosby, when you're looking up for a book review from James Kestrel, when you're looking for a book review from someone like Attica Locke, there's not a lot of options out there, and there's not a lot of people talking about them. So I really wanted to kind of foster a community where, these people are winning awards for their fiction and people are buying these up. And I really wanted to foster a community around that and meet like-minded people who are reading these, enjoying these, and able to turn me on to more fiction like this. And being able to just grow a community and talk with people and meet people, that all share the same interest has been amazing. And, just to be able to continue growing this channel and meeting more great people, having more people turn me on to new authors I've never read before, that's really been exciting, and just getting to talk to all of you all the time. Okay, so that kind of wraps up, my reading philosophy. Next, I want to tag 4 booktubers as well, who I think will have various insights into this as well. So first, I want to tag Brian from Bookish or Bookish Texan. There is Peg from The History Shelf. There is Brad over at Brad Proctor Reads. And finally, Britton from Some Okie Dude. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. You 4 all serve different areas of fiction here on BookTube, and I think all of the insights that you guys have are incredible. So hearing your guys' philosophy on reading and why you read and why it's important would be amazing. As always, thanks for stopping by the back porch. I'm Matt, and I'll see you guys next week.